Christian, God isn't mad or disappointed in you. He knows you fully and loves you perfectly. He provided a Savior, not a goal. You're free to be yourself and come on in. Welcome to the Grace Cafe.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Grace Cafe podcast. I'm glad I caught that.
Yeah.
We got about 2 or 3 minutes into the podcast, and then I realized I hadn't pressed record. So if we had gone the whole thing, I would have really
Would have been a bummer.
Kind of weird. Yeah. So anyway, welcome to the Grace Cafe podcast. My name is Mike Adams.
And I'm Susan.
And we've come to realize that since shutting down our podcast back whenever we did that a few years ago, we've gained some new listeners who maybe aren't familiar with our story, our backstory, how we got here, who we are, what's been going on with us. So we thought we'd take this episode to fill in some of the blanks there and talk a little bit about our journey out of religion into grace awareness, grace of the new covenant, the gospel of the new covenant, and kind of talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of details in there that we could bring up. We could talk forever on this, but just kind of a high level overview, maybe. Go ahead.
I think probably if we just give a foundation, then throughout our next podcast, the life of this podcast, things will come up that we'll remember and share about. But if we can just really just go back to what happened and why we're not in the institution anymore.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Being a former pastor and coming out of that whole deal, it wasn't easy, but man, I'm so glad we did it, and it started years ago. I mean, decades ago. It
was horrible.
Yeah.
It was really horrible. It was the darkest time in our lives.
Yeah. But what led up to that, is decades old now. And we started to see things here and there before we actually made the final decision to jump, to leap, the leap of faith. And, we just started to see some things in there that were weird, that just didn't add up. And then as we started to understand the gospel a little bit better, which back then wasn't a very good understanding of the gospel, but it was something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beginning. And we just saw that things weren't lining up with what we thought they should be in the institutional church. And so we had planted a church back in May of 2000. With
some other people.
Right. And I was one of the pastors in that church. And as it progressed along, I don't think it started this way, but as it progressed along, it just became more legalistic, more harsh, more mean. I guess I could use that word. And about in 2007 maybe, I remember saying this to you because we were meeting in a building that was about 20 miles from our home. So this other family could meet there. It was kind of in between. So we were driving clear over there. And I remember one Sunday morning on the way over there in the car, I turned to you and I said, why are we doing this? Why are we driving clear over here to do something we can do in our living room? And for me, I think that was the beginning of starting to put the pieces together a little bit. And then the harshness came in, the meanness came in, and that took it to a completely different level. So for me, 2007-ish, I started just questioning things. And then in 2008, I remember this really well. In 2008, somewhere around Thanksgiving, I stepped down. I just stepped down out of that position, which, whatever that means. And you have your own story. I'm going to let you tell it, during that same time. And then in 2009, early 2009, we both decided that's it, we're done. And we walked away from that whole institutional church setting.
From that one.
From that one, yeah.
And I have to say that there were times throughout those years that you said, why are we doing this? Because I think you had listened to John Zenz a lot or read him. It was probably nothing to listen to back then.
True.
But the talk about having a home church, doing it differently, or even just leaving where we were at, because something was in you And I don't know that you were not being completely honest with me or you just didn't know yourself, but you wanted to leave. And I panicked every time you brought that up because I thought, where else are we going to go? Who else is going to believe this doctrine that we held so closely? Where else were we going to find these friendships? And I put those in quotes that, were so close, quotes again. And so I always said, no, we can't. Where are we going to go? And you never pushed it. And we just stayed. And that ended, I would say, in a disaster, but I also say it's the beginning for us, the beginning of a walk in grace.
Yeah, it was. And, I think the reason why I didn't stress it so much back then is probably because of the way you felt about it. I didn't want you to get more stressed out. We were both really stressed out.
We were.
And yeah.
A lot of years of high intensity, and people wouldn't have seen it. We were functioning. We didn't even see it in ourselves. That high level of not panic, but anxiety.
Yeah.
Of making sure we were meeting everybody's needs, that we were where we were supposed to be, that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And you had a job on this. You had a regular career too on top of all of this. But your expectation on you was to function as if you didn't have that job.
Exactly. It was very stressful. And then it started getting mean.
Yeah.
And, people didn't see that either because most of it was behind closed doors.
Right.
But we'd go to, an elder meeting, pastor meeting, whatever you want to call it. And someone would get ambushed just unexpectedly. It's like someone in the group, and it changed from person to person.
Except for one.
Yeah, except for one.
Who never got ambushed.
That's right. It's like somebody would show up with a secret agenda.
Yeah.
And then after the meeting started, we're talking about planning something or whatever. All of a sudden, it's like vicious wolves, kind of ganging up on one of the people in there, and sometimes they were ganging up on me. And just right out of the blue, unexpected, just weird stuff.
Yeah. First, you were really the topic, the one that they went after. And I remember a couple of times them showing up at our house and we're sitting at a table and they have a list of grievances.
Yeah.
And these grievances, people, were not anything big.
They were stupid.
Yeah. You don't return my phone calls when you get home from work. You email me. You're taking the coward's way out.
That's right.
And, just things like that.
That's what it got to. Email was the coward's way out.
And then you had bought a drum set and one of them wanted to know where you got the money to do that. What in the heck?
I'm like, back off, man.
But we didn't. We didn't say that. We didn't think that. We thought, oh no, we're doing it wrong.
And I think the reason, one of the reasons for that, at least looking back on it, and we probably would have never said this while we were there, but it was cultish.
Yeah.
You were afraid to do that because you would get punished next, and the whole thing was conformity, and it was a legalism of do. Are you doing enough? Are you doing enough the right way? And it just got really cultish. It was almost like a cult following.
Well, and the fear for me was we would lose everyone. And we did.
We did anyway.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
But I can remember this really clearly in this one meeting that they came over to our house in our dining room. After they read the list of complaints against you, your shoulders had dropped and you had just like a beaten down puppy. And you said at the end, I'll try to do better.
Yeah. And the doing better part was what it was all about. I remember when we left, one of the couples came over who, at this point, I think he was either an elder or deacon. I don't remember, but they came over and, or we met them somewhere after we had told everybody, or after we had told the leadership that we were leaving, they came over and said, well, tell us why and what we can do better. And the whole thing was doing better.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about betterment. It was all about conformity. It was all about rules and regulations. It became, like I said a minute ago, just a very legalistic environment, but a legalism of do, not a legalism of don't.
And we've had, after we left, well, let's back up. After you were the subject of all of the beatings the next guy became the subject of all the beatings, unbeknownst to you why. It just started happening, and you were like, you'd come home and say, wow, it really went at each other. And you didn't know the core of it, but it became worse and worse. And then he was berated in the front of the church continually, pretty much. And then till he left town to start working with somebody else in another ministry. And that relieved everybody at our place because, he just went to go do another ministry. He didn't leave us.
Yeah, the people were lied to.
Yeah. And so we were Skyping with him and his wife after all of the things happened to us. And he said, I don't know why, but I was coming after you and I wanted you gone.
Yeah.
So that was the mindset. And how sad is that? I read this thing, an African proverb this week, and it said, sheep are terrified of wolves, but they end up getting eaten by their shepherds. So I just thought that was a pretty good picture of a lot of what's going on out there today.
It sure is. It's a very good picture. It's a very accurate picture of what's going on out there today. And we talked about the friends that we thought we had.
Uh-huh.
They were only friends in that religious environment. They were only friends as long as we were useful to them.
Right.
Because when the Holy Spirit started doing something different in us and we decided to leave, and we didn't leave in a bad way, I talked to one of the other pastors and said, my heart's just not in this anymore. I need something different. And he was all right with that at first for about 3 or 4 days. And then all of a sudden he became vicious and started attacking me and us, and the gossiping started. But the people that we thought were friends, were close friends, some of them we had vacationed with, turned out to believe the lies, believe the gossip, and just turned on us because we became of no value to them. We weren't supporting the thing
or the guy.
Yeah.
The main guy.
Yeah. And so we were suspect, and people were believing lies about us that were being told. And I remember my name even showed up in a sermon online.
Yeah.
And it took me a year to get them to take that down. It was really slanderous, and it was a lie. It wasn't true. You talk about losing friends. This was a lot of crap that happened to us. And so we kind of left there licking our wounds, and we didn't turn to the gospel right away. I think we were starting to see it a little bit, but we were just so beat up that we didn't want anything to do with that environment for a while, or with theology, and reading the Bible and stuff, because it was weaponized against us so much.
Well, I walked away from the faith. And
yeah, you did.
Let me just back up for a moment about the friends. There were some people who had left before us, and then some really good friends who left shortly after us, but they waited to leave because they themselves were in a dark place.
Yeah.
And emotionally couldn't leave. So we did have friends.
Yeah, that's true.
That did last, but for the most part, we didn't. I mean, I remember going to a wedding shower that I had to go to. Or maybe it was a baby shower, but it was, it was a baby shower. And because it was for one of our grandchildren. And I had a woman who just walked past me, wouldn't even look at me through the whole thing. I mean, and another thing, a baby reveal, a man he wouldn't give me eye contact. He just walked past me. We were shunned.
Right.
And I remember it started out that I was in a really bad place, depression-wise. And I had just come to my end emotionally. I was curled up in a chair, I remember, and just saying, I can't do this anymore. And one of the leaders came over and said, hey, let's all meet, which we should have known. So we all met with the leadership and their wives, because that's what we did.
Yeah, and you assume it's going to be something encouraging,
but it wasn't.
No.
And I had that week gone to the doctor because I was getting scared of how depressed I was. And she did a test with me and diagnosed me with severe depression, was concerned about suicide. So I told these people that. And they started going after me because I had said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be what you want me to be. And whoa, well, no one's expecting anything of you.
Right.
Anyway,
The mother of all lies.
so it ended with him leaning in. I can't remember if he leaned in or stood up, but it was like this thing. And you felt me shrinking in the couch the whole evening. He said, you are dragging the name of Jesus through the mud, and I, as your elder, will not let you continue. And let me tell you that leading up to that, for years, because of our theology, had felt damaged. I felt not worthy of God's love. I felt like I could never get a hold of all of my sin. I couldn't conquer all of my sin. I couldn't always have joy. I rarely had joy. I had all these things inside me that I wasn't good enough and that I was going to lose everybody if I said anything. Well, everything I thought came to fruition in that one moment. And so someone said, boy, that really meant a lot to you. That he said that. Well, they don't understand that the buildup to it and the darkness my brain was in, it became trauma. It became locked into my brain. And so that night you stayed up all night. You couldn't even sleep. You stayed out in the living room, and in bed, I was thinking, how can I commit suicide? I should commit suicide because I am a disappointment to God. Just like I believed before, he confirmed it, and I'm a disappointment to all the people. And that's where I was for a while.
Let's talk a little bit about your injury, the scooter thing
Oh, yeah.
and being alone and that whole thing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that fits in?
Yeah. So I had just few months before all this happened, I had broken my ankle, had a surgery, and I couldn't get around, and I had to get rid of my dog because I couldn't get anyone in our family or friends to come help take care of this puppy. It was a Labrador puppy, and understandably, she was a lot of work, and I just couldn't do it. So I started getting depressed, and that's when I started gaming. I found a online community of gamers who were not Christians. Well, I think maybe a couple of them were, but they were like so accepting of me. This is after we left. Yeah. I found I was depressed. I had nobody in my life. So I started gaming. Then I found this website, and then we started having these nights of gaming on Skype. And I mean, it was a whole thing, and a lot of healing happened there.
Yeah. But as far as the broken ankle and that scooter and stuff, you were forced in that situation medically to have a lot of alone time,
Right.
a lot of downtime. I was working full time still, and you were alone a lot.
Yes.
And I think you want to talk about how that was for you and what was going on there as far as, looking internally. And
I did a lot of introspection at the time. I did a lot of, people weren't coming around me and visiting like we always did. And which I'm okay. Like now I look back and I think that was really a gift from God, because it gave me a chance to think, what are my motives? I can still remember going down the scooter, down the hallway, and I saw this dog hair. And for some reason, it made me think, why am I doing all of this? Isn't that a weird connection?
yeah,
But I thought, why am I striving so hard to please God and it's not working? What is my motivation? And I realized my motivation was to please people.
Mm.
And at that moment, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And that's right there is a real moment where I decided they can shun me. They can say what they want about me, but I cannot do this anymore. And that's when I told you I wasn't going back to that church.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay.
And I was ready to not go back, but I still went. It was, I don't know, a month or so after that, maybe before I left.
Not for very long. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. But you basically started to just walk away from the faith.
Well, yeah, because they were coming after you because you wouldn't let people in
Right.
to me unless I said they were safe and yes, they could come in. So you were my gatekeeper.
And that was a very small number of people.
Yeah. Well, they wanted, because I said, I'm not coming back to church.
Right.
So suddenly they all wanted to come find out, why are you not coming back to church? And you wouldn't, there's only a couple of people that I let in. And it just, one time they were just going after you, some people. And I just said, because you weren't handling me right. You weren't
according to them.
Yeah. You weren't making me go to church. You weren't reading the Bible to me. You weren't letting everybody in our front door. You had set boundaries. So they were going after you. It was a nighttime and and for me, it just felt like this pounding. And I just finally said, hey, if in this scenario, I'm not a believer, do you leave Mike alone? And they said, well, yeah, because you're an unbeliever. He couldn't make you go to church. So I said, I'm not a believer. And it seemed to like relieve a lot of people.
It made people happy.
But I remember getting you sitting in a chair in the living room, and you would get phone calls. And this is before cell phones, or, you would get these phone calls and I could hear. And like someone from Canada called and said,
oh, yeah.
Oh, I heard Susan denied that Jesus died on the cross. I mean, this is in Canada. And someone from North Carolina called and said, I heard Susan's not a believer and has denied Jesus. So word was spreading what Susan was supposedly
the gossip
doing.
mill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, it just, and one pastor called you and really from another church.
I know. I don't even know the guy.
Yelled at you for how that you needed to get your wife under control.
I'm like, dude, I'm kind of proud of her.
I mean, it's laughable now, but I remember hearing this guy yelling at you.
I know.
And I'm
thinking,
whoa.
Who are you? That
So,
was something.
I don't know, but it wasn't funny at the time. At the
No.
time, we were it was the things that people said to me, like, it sounds like you just want a hippie love fest. It sounds like, because I just wanted love. I just thought, all I could think of is that we need to love. And so it felt like I was sliced up with a whole bunch of razor blades, and people would just come and throw salt at me. Throw salt. That's the image that always came to my mind.
Well, go figure. God is love, and you wanted to be loved. I mean, that's not really a stretch, when you think about it. But yeah, at the time, we didn't think that was, fun or exciting. But later on, okay, so let's pass into 2009.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are we going to get where I came back? Where I realized I was truly...
Yeah, let's do that here in just a minute. I want to talk about my leaving.
Oh, okay.
And then
we'll talk about you.
Let's talk about me. This podcast is all about me. Didn't you get the memo? But yeah, let's talk about our Valentine's Day massacre as well, and that whole thing. We had spent, you and I, we would talk, we're always talking and communicating, but we weren't talking about a lot of things that mattered at that time just because of all of the stress, all of the pressure, everything that's going on.
Your mom had died.
My mom had died, and I was told I need to get over that quickly.
Yeah.
And today, if they had said that, I would have said F you. But then, we were kind of sucked into this cultish atmosphere and
choose joy.
Afraid to be real and afraid to confront this false authority, which no one has authority over you in the body of Christ, people. No one.
Mm-hmm.
Your pastor doesn't. Your priest doesn't. No one does, except God, who is living in you. And he's always going to treat you lovingly and gently. He's not going to treat you harshly or condemn you or shame you or make you feel guilty. That isn't how the Holy Spirit works. Anyway, I digress. So 2009, that's pretty much when I said, I'd already stepped down, but in 2009, I said, I'm going to leave. And at first it was received okay. And back then, in that situation, when you were going to leave or do some big decision, you were supposed to get up in front of everybody and tell them.
Mm-hmm. And ask for advice.
Yeah. And then people would give their opinions, blah, blah, blah. I decided not to do that. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested. I'm already gone. And
well, you didn't feel like you could do it because you're supposed to be able to answer questions.
Yeah. And plus, I just didn't want to. And the other pastor that was probably the main guy or was the main guy, there's always a main guy. Even if you've got a plurality, there's always a main guy. Anyway, he was fine with that. We talked on the phone. It was early in the week, I remember. And I said, I'm going to leave, but I'm not going to tell any, I'm not going to get up and do anything. I'm not going to jump through the hoops. I didn't use that phrase, but I'm using it now. But, I'm not going to do that. And he was fine. He said, okay, that's fine. He said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, he called me back and was mad, and he had changed his mind. And he said, you need to get up there and do that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm already gone. I've called around some key people within the church and told them I was gone, told them I was leaving and why. And everybody was fine with it. It's not a big deal. But he had changed his mind. And so when that Sunday came, I wasn't there. We weren't there because we had left. But he got up in front of everybody and gave his little spin on why we were leaving, which wasn't completely true. And then he told people that we didn't want to be contacted.
Yeah.
And so right after the service, somebody called me that was in it and said, hey, so-and-so said you don't want to be contacted. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, they came over and we were on our back patio.
Right.
And he told you that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So then you called.
Yeah. So then I called this other pastor that had got up and said that. And I asked him, and I had him on speakerphone, I think.
Well, we could hear it. Yeah. I don't know if it was speaker, but we heard it.
Something. But, I was sitting there and I said, did you tell people that I don't want to be contacted? I said, that's not true. Anybody can contact me. Everybody knows how to contact me. They've got my phone number. They got my email. Anybody can contact me. They know where I live. I'm not hiding out. And, he just blew up on the phone.
Yeah, he did.
He just started screaming on the phone. And, it was on speaker or whatever. And so we were all listening to it. I remember we just all looked at each other and thought, what is this all about?
He said, how does it make me look like?
Yeah. I mean, just screaming on the phone. And then that's when the rumor mill started. And I'll just say this, when we left, we started going to another local church because we were still of the mindset that, okay, you've got to go somewhere. You've got to go. You got to go somewhere just out of conformity. Like God wants you to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were going to this other church, which was preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the floodgates opened after we left. It's like everybody there that left after us was waiting for the first person to leave so that they wouldn't be first. And all of a sudden, and we were in this other church, and all of a sudden, all these people that had left the previous church after we did.
And before, some of them.
Yeah, some of them started showing up. And we were taking up the back few rows of these seats in this church. And finally, the pastor comes and, wants to talk to us and says, what's going on? Where'd you all come from? We told him we all came from the same place. And he's going, wow, there must be something really strange going on over there. I said, oh, yeah, there's something really strange going on over there. But it was like the walking wounded. That's what we called it. That's what we called those back rows of the building of the church where we were meeting. It was the walking wounded. And we were just there kind of licking our wounds and healing.
A lot of healing went on there.
And it wasn't like our understanding of the gospel was immediate. I'm saying our understanding of the gospel, we've understood the gospel, but understanding the freedom in the new covenant that is ours by grace and just from belief, just by believing, that's all you have to do is believe. We understood that, I guess, in theory, but it didn't really go deep at that time. It was starting to, but it took a period of years to really understand the depths of the riches of the grace of God and how that's all we need.
Well, I know that for me, let me back up to what happened because I had denied the faith. And then I started thinking, I had certain people in my life who would call me, who I let call me, and they would just share how much God loved me and that kind of stuff. And I remember feeling like this burden was on my back. And I remembered we had gone through Pilgrim's Progress. And I emailed you at work and I said, Mike, where in Pilgrim's Progress is that? How did he get rid of that burden on his back? So I remember looking through the whole book and trying to find that. How did he get rid of that burden on his back? And I was outside sitting in the sun because the doctor recommended I sit in the sun every day. And all of a sudden, and I just said, God, I need to know. And all of it was like this whole assurance thing flooded my soul. And I knew I was a believer. And so then that's when I said I would go to church. And that's when we found this church with the gospel. And he was going through the Gospel of Mark. And the pivotal thing for me, I think, the whole way through, he was showing Jesus as this kind, loving person. And I had such a harsh view of God coming out of what we came out of, that in itself, and the songs that the guy led, he wrote his own songs and they were all centered around Jesus and, God and his love. My heart began to heal. And that was how that happened.
Unfortunately, that church is no more.
Yeah.
It got absorbed into the collective, not long after that. But yeah, we had some friends that left there with us, some that left before that would spend time with us, let us vent.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty raw.
We were very raw.
And they didn't try and fix us. They just let us be raw. And we had another couple who had been longtime friends and stayed with us, and they would come over and just let us be raw. They weren't a part of that particular church, but they were part of the mothership, the church that church had come out of. And they're still really good friends. I mean, when you hear the intro to this podcast
and the outro,
that's him, the intro and the outro. He's still with us. Very good friends. She is, if you listen to the UnSunday show and the gal that comes on at the beginning, you're listening to the UnSunday show. That's her. And so we see them regularly and we spend time with them. But there were a couple that just came over to help.
And then we started meeting at their house, I remember, with some other really broken, just dark people in dark places.
Yes.
And we would watch these videos on grace. And then I got to a phase of letting out my anger, all the pent up anger, because anger is such a sin. And boy, I had a lifetime of F words inside me that came out, and no one flinched.
Right.
They just loved me. It's like what I thought about this when Joe did the intro today, and I listened to it, and he said that he accepts us just as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had just missed so much of the real truth. And I'm going to talk about this on the next podcast, the real truth of what the gospel is.
Yeah.
And how much God loves us. But it was a process to learn that. And isn't that something when, because when we first got saved, we were at Calvary Chapel, and that was all peace and love, and
that was the
a
original
hippie love fest, actually.
Yeah. It was the original Calvary Chapel.
Yeah.
It was before it became a denominational thing.
Yeah.
And before it got systematized and institutionalized, it was just a bunch
Jesus
of
movement.
Yeah, it was just Jesus. I mean, that was it.
But then we stepped into the institutional Baptist church, and that was it.
That's right. Let's circle back real quick, and let's talk about our Valentine's Day, St. Valentine's Day massacre. So this is February of 2009. We had left. We were gone. We were kind of in a different place from one another, but in the same place in many ways.
Well,
we
isn't this when I said I'm not going back? Or
this is where, we hadn't really talked about the specifics of what we're feeling, what we're going through, what's going on. We were wearing masks, and we were still conforming in many ways in order to just stay plugged in, or whatever phrase I guess I could use. But on Valentine's Day in February of 2009, I was out of town. I was helping my dad. My mom had died, and I was helping my dad with some things. And you drove up there and met me on Valentine's Day, and we went to dinner. And that turned out to be a 5-hour dinner. And it was our St. Valentine's Day massacre, because that's when we really started to open up. And that's when we really started to get everything on the table. Not about our relationship. There wasn't anything wrong there, but about what we had been through and what we thought of it and how we're processing it and where do we go from here. All of that got out on the table. And it was one of the best conversations ever, because, it was intense and it was hard to do at times, but it was reality. And it felt good to just talk it through. And we realized that we were both at the same place at that time. We had got there a little bit different, you through your depression, me through just conformity to the rules, and not wanting to be ostracized, and just compliance all the way through, complying to the rules. And I hit a wall of performance, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when we talked about all of that, and it all came out on the table. And then that was kind of the beginning, or the starting point, I guess, of the newness that we were about to experience.
Well, admittedly, a lot of this is fuzzy to me as far as
Right.
the real detail of like in what order things happened, because that was a long time ago, but that was very soon. That was right around that time. And it was when I told you I couldn't do it anymore either. I was tired of it. I was tired of the pressure to be who people wanted me to be all the time, and putting my family second and putting everybody else first. Yeah, it was a really dark time. It was hard because we had family that went to that church, and just relationships were hard for a very long time. And I eventually went to a Christian counselor, and she had me read that book by Steve Brown, Scandalous Freedom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And which I couldn't read at the time. When you're severely depressed, most of the time you can't read. And she said, well, read, a paragraph or two every day if you can. So I started reading that, and pretty soon I was just like involved in that book and reading that book, and my eyes were being opened to God's love and to the freedom, the scandalous freedom that the gospel is for us. And we were privileged to be able to interview Steve Brown after that and meet him at a conference, but that was life-changing. But then as time went on, I went back to my counselor and I said, I'm triggered. Every time someone's name comes up or I see someone, I panic inside. My whole body just reacts. And she says, it sounds like you have PTSD. She said, I think you should see a therapist. So I went to a therapist. A friend of ours who had been through similar things recommended this therapist, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. And she did EMDR with me, which helps trauma leave your brain, because trauma is a memory that's stuck, and it doesn't become like a distant memory. It stays with you. So your body reacts every time your body feels like it's threatened again. So that really helped me to help recover from religion.
Yeah.
It's just sad. It's sad to even think that, but
That you have to recover from. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So true.
And no one recognizes it. They don't. From back there, they don't. They still don't get it. And I have to just think, okay, they're on their journey. I'm on my journey. It's okay that I have boundaries. It's okay. Forgiveness isn't about reconciliation.
Right.
I went through the whole forgiveness thing a few times, trying to forgive and get it out of my heart, and now it's just okay, but there's no reconciliation.
Right.
And I don't see any.
Yeah. And that's okay. So since that time, we've it's been a process for us, understanding more and more about the grace of God and our sufficiency in Jesus, and it's Him plus nothing.
And I think our next podcast will explain about this, about our journey, a little more about not what we went through, but what we discovered.
Yes.
Along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be in the next episode. So anything else on this one?
No, that's all I can remember. I mean, I'm sure things will come up through different podcasts, and just to know that it's pretty cool that it is a distant memory, and it is kind of fuzzy of the timeline, because for so long I lived it.
Yeah, it was like in the forefront with you for a long time.
Yeah, a very long
years,
time.
Decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a decade.
When you've been traumatized, you have to talk about it over and over and over again. And the blessing, the real gift, was our friends who are willing to listen to it over and over and over and over again.
Well, it's just like this conversation. The more you talk about it over and over again, the more healing it becomes. The more you see let's say details, but the more you see the effects of what it was doing to you looking back on.
Yeah.
And instead of being right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well, I just want to give a personal note here as we close. I want to thank everyone for reaching out to us.
Oh, yes.
Those of you who reached out to us from our last episode talking about my health scare. And I really appreciated all the emails, the notes, and things that went on there. Really appreciated it. I know some new contacts have come out of that for both you and I.
Yep.
And really, it meant a lot to me.
Well, yeah, and people reached out and talked about how they found community or how they were lacking community. And it just shows that we need each other, even if it's across the miles.
Yes, we do. So thank you to everyone that reached out to us.
Yes.
Thank you for your concern about my health. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you can go back and listen to that previous episode. It's all right there. So I guess we'll close this one up. And I really appreciate y'all joining us again today on the Grace Cafe podcast. And until next time, y'all take care.
Thank you for joining us on the Grace Cafe podcast. To be a part of this ongoing conversation, visit us online at gracecafepodcast.com.